Apyayantu mamangani Vakpranashchakshushrotramatho balamindriyani cha sarvani Sarvam Brahma Upanishadam Maham Brahma Nirakuryam Mama Brahma Nirakarot Anirakaranam Astva Nirakaranam Me Astu Tadatmani Nirateya Upanishatsu Dharmaste Mayi Santu Te Mayi Santu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Chapter 3. The good guys, Devas, are celebrating their victory over the bad guys, the Asuras, and there is a potential that they may start to take a little bit of excess pride in their ownership of a victory, or they may lose their, their bearings. So what happens is Ishvara sees that they're losing their way, right? They're great, they're intelligent, they came with many skills, they are bright, they are good people, but a good person can go sideways any moment. You just put a good person in the right situation, and slowly that situation can creep in, and slowly my original pure thoughts start to get distorted with impure thoughts. And it happens so slowly, so gradually, that if you were to look at before and after a 5-year period, it would be a vast difference. But because just like our bodies, it grows so slowly, we never catch, we don't see it. It's just happening so slowly. And yet there is this change that's happening. So therefore Ishvara comes down in the form of Yaksha and wants to show them that there is much more to their victory than their own self-effort. There are realities that they are yet to discover. And we said that the Devas were very curious. Who is this beautiful celestial being who is capturing our imagination? It just captures us. And this means that they were, number one, curious. That means there's always something bigger, there's something more beautiful. And the Devas, they thought we are beautiful, we are celestial. And Ishvara, being limitless, there's always another being that can come and just totally captures you. Wow. And this is how it is. You see someone and then you get humbled by how much you really are and how much you really know. And so they send Agni. Now Agni, we said, is one who can burn things but can also destroy things, but can also bring light to situations. So this means any power that you're endowed with, like speech. The devata of speech is Agni. Why? Because with my speech I can start a war, but I can also bring unity. And thus Agni was sent to see who this Yaksha is. What can you do, Agni? Well, I am the great, the one who fulfills people's wishes, because whatever they throw inside me, the fire, I will distribute that to the various gods to which the Brahman or to which you want to get in touch with. So Agni is a medium by which you can transfer your intention to the right facets of intelligence. It's not like there's gods sitting there now waiting for some fire down there to send them some smoke, but rather it is a method by which you can direct your intention. And through directing your intention through this fire, you're saying that this I find very precious to me. May the health of some individual be restored that I care about. May my memory become fantastic. May my capacity to recall things when I most need them, may that flourish in those crucial times. Therefore, you are making a prayer, but an extended prayer, thus increasing the chances of receiving some punyam, some pleasant results that are conducive for your growth. So this is the purpose of rituals. And thus, Agni could not, grass was, Yaksha offered the grass and says, okay, so you can burn things, no problem. Here's a little piece of grass, burn this. And Agni tried all he could, all she could, couldn't do it. So this means that you can never go above Ishvara. Ishvara always gives you a piece of grass that eludes you, that escapes you, and then you go, wow, I thought I've had it, but there is, right? Ishvara throws you some test and shows you there is much more opportunity for growth. So Yaksha is not giving them a hard time. He just wants to show them, hey, let me help you. Just see that even though you're sitting on a high chair, a low chair, the CEO, you're a parent, at any moment, something can come and throw you off. And this grass indicates that there is always a bigger unseen force that I do not see in the future, and yet it is there. All of us right now have a timeline, and this timeline is filled with events. And you and I don't have access to this timeline. But the timeline exists, and the timeline is always changing. So it's not like you can now rise above and see your timeline. No, because the moment you make a choice, you change your timeline. This is why those fortune tellers, sometimes they're right, sometimes they're not right. Or astrologers, right? Let me read your path. And you're like, wow, this is so true. But the moment you walk out of that field, that little arena, that place, you trip over a banana that changes your path. It already changes your path. You trip over, go to the hospital, and you're now a different person. And why do you trip over? Well, you tripped over because you came to the fortune teller. There happened to be a banana peel in front of them. So just that alone. And so the fortune teller tells you, you will be in a hospital. What do you mean? What do you mean I will go in a hospital? Well, you will be in a hospital for quite a while. And you say, there's no way, I'm totally healthy. And because the previous client left the banana peel there, you walk out and you slip on a banana peel and your future becomes true. So there's this paradox, like, if I didn't go to the fortune teller, he would have never said that. So you never quite know, right? What is it? Is the fortune teller telling the truth, or it's a self-fulfilling prophecy? And even if they do tell the truth, you're always making a decision, a new decision, based on a vast complex of people. Someone recommends you a book that already changes your course of the future. And thus, the future is always changing for all of us. So you cannot control the future. You can only pray, let my future be conducive for my livelihood. Let my future be relatively clean and bright and supporting my journey, like as we all live today. Let my future be supporting me along this long journey of life. Therefore, Ishvara is waiting. Start to pray, and Ishvara responds. That is how the law is made. And you say it's such a small thing, but who prays? Like, how many actually pray? How many actually have a connection to God through prayer? It's like very few. We have a wish, but a wish is like 1 second. A prayer is actually having an intention, closing eyes. Sa guna brahma vishaya manasa vyaparaha. In other words, relating to Ishvara through prayer, through transactions, through meditation. Okay? And then Vayu came over. Of course, Agni went back to the Devas and says, I can't burn this. I couldn't find out who the Yaksha is. And he says, no problem. We will send our number 2 man called Vayu. So Vayu goes, who can, of course, lift up cyclones, things through cyclones. They can do so many good things. But again, Vayu had a little bit of pride, so they too said, I can lift up anything in this world. Fear me. And so again, okay, let me give you a little test in life, a piece of grass. And then you see your so-called talents and your skills are not that special. So it always brings us back down to earth. That whatever performance we give, whatever music we give, it is just that. That, in other words, we don't make it more, we don't make it less. It's just what it is. And therefore, so in other words, it's neither wonderful nor not wonderful. It's just a performance. Okay? And therefore, whatever interpretation you give it is your interpretation. But it inherently doesn't have any interpretation. It's just, a performance. It's just your skill. It's just your talent. And Vayu's talent could not work. He tried all he could not lift the grass. And then he came back, says, I do not know who this Yaksha is. It's okay, we will send Indra. Indra is the king of Devas. And when Indra popped up, the Yaksha disappeared. And as we said, the symbolism of this is super. So in other words, no matter, even if you present a perfectly laid out book, step by step, the way that it's made is that we need human beings to relate. This is how we are. Even with AI today, you can basically get AI to say, I want you to take a role of a teacher and I'm going to keep on asking you questions. I've done it, obviously, because AI, this is the age of apparently artificial intelligence. And I want to see where it's all going. So I did get this chatbot to say, pretend like you're a teacher and you've read all the philosophy texts in the world, and Eastern and Western philosophy, and I want you to guide me from the beginning to help me understand the nature of reality. And what it does is okay, it's wonderful, it's all very well put together, but it's missing the human touch. That human touch you can never get from AI. But all of the words that it does say, they are very well put together, better than any teacher can say. Really, because it's perfect grammar, perfect words, perfect logic. But I'm reading this and I'm going, could I really learn from this? Right? Could I really relate to this? Absolutely not. Yeah. So the teacher will always have a place in this world. So artificial intelligence has helped me a lot. I've gotten some great answers. But at the end of the day, it's always going to go back to my teacher. So in other words, it doesn't really have any real place in my life at the end of the day. That's how we are. So like this, so the knowledge goes over Indra's head, and then Uma appears. Now Uma appears, who is an effulgent woman. In other words, a wonderful person who, in this case, is a guru. And the reason why she appeared for Indra is because Indra had what Vayu and Agni didn't. And what did Indra have? He was open and curious to receiving the knowledge. He had humility. I can't figure this out. And now that Yaksha has disappeared, he didn't go back and say, this Yaksha ran away. He says, whoa, Yaksha disappeared. Wait. I want to find out. So he had this curiosity. And now we said what happens between Uma and Indra. And then verse 4.1. Okay, so verse 4.1 we already discussed, right? Exactly, Uma showed to Indra that the Yaksha was Brahman, and the victory is not Indra's alone, but it is Brahman's victory. It is also by the help of Ishvara. And, okay, now I remember. And the next verse, then what happens after Indra was taught this knowledge by Uma, his guru, he now passes this knowledge to Agni and Vayu. So verse 4.2. Tasmat vai ete deva atitaram eva anyan devan yat agnihi vayuhu indraha tehi enat nedishtam pasprashuhu tehi enat pratamaha vidanchakara brahma iti. So here, Indra passes on this knowledge to Agni and Vayu. So this is a lovely indication of what Guru Shishya Parampara means. So this means Uma didn't have to teach Agni and Vayu, because Uma was way over their head. But Indra was able to pass it on to Agni and Vayu after Indra was taught. So this means that even if you are, an avatara like Uma, a Lord incarnate, or whether you are a jnani, like someone that's just figured out how reality is, both of them can teach you the knowledge. Even if Uma is much more effulgent, it says she's effulgent, that means she's divine like Lord Krishna, she's Lord incarnate. She taught Indra, but Indra is going to teach Agni and Vayu. So this means your teacher can be whoever it is, as long as they understand the reality. Therefore, this is the Guru Shishya Parampara, and Ishvara speaks through both the wise person, which is called the Jivan Mukta or a Jnani, or Avatara. It doesn't matter, because both are just instruments for the exact same knowledge. And even after Shishya discovers the reality, then the Shishya still has a certain reverence for the Guru. It's not like the Shishya now discovered, who they are and like, I don't need the Guru anymore. Human nature doesn't work like that. You still have gratitude for that one who saved you from marketplace of options. So like this, even if you know the reality, it's still kind of a nice relationship between Guru and Shishya. There's no sense of discarding one or discarding the other. Really, a teacher has done something great for you. So all teachers deserve some recognition, some acknowledgement. No matter who they were or what personality they had, everyone has been a stepping stone to your eventual total release from this form. Therefore, like this, we can be grateful.
So this saying, they say at a certain point you have to let go the Guru. This saying, so...
Yeah, so see, this letting go, it's a little bit vague. What does letting go mean? So in the sense of letting go, that some people have this relationship and they want to depend upon. But then again, you're depending upon because you're growing. When you naturally grow, like, a son naturally grows up and they just move away from the parent, they're no longer depending upon the parent, at least here in the Western culture. So this non-dependence is a natural expression of one's growth. It's not like, okay, I've been with this person for 5 years, today I will no longer be with them. But naturally you grow out of it, because your life is now demanding new things. You've got children, you've got other things in your life, and so naturally, right, you may still keep in contact, but it's like any relationship may wane away slowly. But it can also depend what kind of a relationship you have with your guide. If the guide and you have a nice friendly relationship, then it's like friends. Once in a while you kind of contact them, and it's nice to have this person in your life. They give you strength in the background.
So then you have to discern between that it's I lost my words. It's not attachment to the teacher, but because you have to let go of your attachment.
Of course. Now again, see, letting go and this attachment, it's not something that you do. It's something that happens naturally. Just like kids naturally let go of their parents. For example, my relationship with my teacher, I don't even think of it as letting go or holding on. It's not even that. It's just, somebody, they're a wonderful person in your life. They're always speaking, in a way that inspires you. And this is wonderful. It's so healthy. So I'm like, yeah, it's wonderful. I need that. Absolutely. But if it were no longer in my life, hey, you're still fine. You're still totally fine. Yeah.
You also have this important person in your life, in your heart. No? It's not gone. Yeah? You can always, if you think about it, it's immediately there, because it was the person who taught you the knowledge.
Yeah, they're always... Yeah, your teachers are always with you, and especially if they touched you, their voice speaks. This entire course, by the way, is not my own words. Right? I have my own style of delivery, but this is all my teacher's words. I teach exactly how she teaches. So this is not Andre's stuff. And how she teaches is exactly how Dayananda teaches. So everyone will have some right personality going on, but the idea, the structure, the presentation is more or less is always going to be the same. Yeah. So like this, so it's not like there's only one person in your life. So many options are available for you. But I can tell you this, when I don't listen to her, I don't feel as inspired as when I do listen to her. This is for sure. So, and I don't convert this into attachment. It's just something that it's very nice to have that. Now, what's the symbolism of Agni and Vayu receiving the knowledge? So Agni and Vayu have received the knowledge, even though before they could not receive the knowledge. What do you think this means? How come suddenly they were able to receive the knowledge when before they just went away? Yeah, this could be. Maybe they're more compatible with Indra's personality, more comfortable. This could be the case. More faith, yeah, more faith. Maybe because they have this close bond. So we have faith in Indra because he's our king of devas.
Maybe the grace.
Huh?
Grace just happened.
Grace happened. So maybe, so look at this. So maybe when Agni and Vayu first saw Yaksha, maybe the knowledge caught their attention somehow, and maybe it stayed in them for some time, and they were thinking about it in the background, and next time when they were shown this knowledge, obviously this happened much later, it's not like next day, they became relatively open to hear the knowledge. Maybe this could be the case, because the knowledge, once you hear it, there's something in you that strikes that chord, you connect with it.
Or maybe the grass experience had made them realize that they had to review their opinions of themselves.
Very good, very good. So the grass experience.
They may have felt some shame that they just went away and weren't honest to Indra by reporting what really happened.
Right. And so maybe they felt that shame of not reporting honestly, and they said, I want to make a difference because we are devas and people look up to us. We're not asuras. We do the right thing. So one experience has a whole different effects, changes your timeline. It's amazing.
You always know that you're lying to yourself,
Yes.
You always feel
Yes.
you can say a nice story to the whole world. Ultimately, you have to confront yourself that you don't know you're lying.
Yeah, this is true. Okay. So now until one becomes eligible, it's fine. They will kind of hop left and right, but two common things happen if one's not eligible or ready for the knowledge. One of them is projection. And projection can happen two ways. They can project onto oneself, and usually comes in the form of, I'm not good enough for this is above my head, this is too much for me, I need to lower the knowledge, I need to look at some values. So they will, look at themselves as incompetent. So this is one potential. And if this happens, then understand it's not something you separate. I'm going to first look at the values and then I'm going to look at self-knowledge. It is really both, because it is knowledge about the tradition. And the second is one can project onto the teaching or onto the teacher. And onto the teaching, they can say, what is this awareness? This is just a bubble, you cannot prove it. And so it's very quick to dismiss without knowing any real information about it. So very quick to brush it off without having proper knowledge of what's being brushed off. Same thing with the gurus. It's very easy to look at one feature and then coloring the entire person with that feature. But it is actually not fair, because that person is much more than just that feature that you're seeing. So everyone is made of many, many, many features. So one needs to have some space to accommodate the good parts. We said yesterday, pratipaksha bhavana. If I see one, offense in someone or some judgment, I have to find something that is also equally good. This person knows suffering. This person knows pain. This person knows forgiveness. This person knows how to hug. This person knows how to be a friend. This is a fact. Maybe not with me, but with someone else. But it's a fact. Therefore, you cancel out this insistent need to find faults in other people. Now, Indra passes on this knowledge to everyone else because Indra feels so indebted for what the quantum shift it has done for him. And then verse 4.3, I won't read. I'm just going to look at the 4.3, the translation. Okay, someone read 4.3 in English? Okay. So here it says, Indra was most exalted. Now, why was Indra most exalted? In other words, more exalted than Vayu and Agni? Well, he was open that the other two were not so open. So he had a humility, as Monique said, right? And he had, Monique, right? Monica, yeah. So he had the humility and the openness, and that made his mind more refined. So how is Indra more exalted? His mind was more refined, more subtler, able to capture the yaksha, able to capture the realities. Thus, Uma came to his life because he recognized this teacher has something that I need. And that takes a certain composure. In other words, Indra asked the questions that were at his level. He didn't say, oh, let me, ask a higher question just to prove myself how I'm smart. But he asked questions that are genuinely at his level. And this is a mark of a good student. They always ask questions that genuinely, right now, you want to ask. You never say, oh, I'm going to ask a question and strategically put it together just so it sounds smart. If the question is about, hey, what is Ishvara? And you've been hearing that for 5 years, you still ask that. That's what makes you most exalted. It sounds like a weakness, but it's a strength. Asking questions at the level that you're at, that will take you so far. Again, when I'm listening to my teacher's webinars, I used to ask basic questions. Even playing the role as a teacher, ask basic questions. I said, enough of pretending, of trying to put some mask, how I am doing this, and I'm supposed to ask sophisticated questions. I remember that, and I also know what it feels to ask questions at your level. And it's feels much better to ask questions where you're at. And just doing that will allow you to ask much more sophisticated questions. In other words, we want to ask sophisticated questions because it's going to give us an impression I'm smart. But to ask that, you start asking questions that are exactly at your level. And that's going to initially feel uncomfortable because it sounds like I'm a beginner. Yeah, that's where the mind is at in that moment. But you'll be surprised within 1 year how much more sophisticated and subtle your questions will become. Yesterday we talked about authenticity. Who you are is what you ask. Congruence. And then after Indra gained the knowledge, he took the responsibility of passing it on because it has changed him and her so much that they feel helplessly wanting to now give it to those others who are seeking this knowledge because he recognized the depth, how much it has done for him. And you just feel helpless. My God, I've literally just crossed an ocean of waves offering me lovely options here and there. I just crossed the whole ocean. So it's not something that Indra wants to do to appear big, even though that can kind of happen in real life, and you can find anything nowadays. But Indra did it out of mere gratitude for what it's done for him. And therefore, he decided to pass it on. Now, why do some traditions die? There are some traditions that are excellent, but they die out. Why is that?
They don't pass it on. There's no Guru Shishya.
They don't pass it on. There's no Guru Shishya. Just that Guru Shishya Parampara is gone. In other words, it's kept secret. No, it's our stuff. Let's keep it secret because it's so special. And then what happens is everything else in the world keeps on growing and growing and amplifying. All of the other notions keep on, and they get more popular. And by the time this eventually comes, this secret comes into the world, it is so unpopular. By then, you already got 1 million followers of all of these other things out there.
I got a question. How much do you think it's the responsibility of a student once the student has understood the reality of his being, of the self, to pass it on to others?
Yeah, so it is not something that you choose. It's something that out of gratitude, you just want to do. Helplessly you do it. But you also need, obviously, right, some speaking, some right way to explain, some ways to natural spontaneity to put words together and to explain clearly. So it's a mixture. Number one, it's coming out of gratitude because you know how much knowledge has done for you. And second of all, you know already that you have a relatively good, a decent way of presenting things, no matter what it is. You can present business, you can present, stock market, you can present real estate, you can present how to improve your memory. There's something about the way that you present that people pay attention. So it is another thing, like a singer. I can't sing, right? You can sing, for example. So I would not succeed in singing. Therefore, it is a combination of both. So it's not like you must, right? Otherwise, you're gonna get punished, right? It's not like that. It's something that makes sense to you.
Isn't it also that Ishvara will create the setting for this to happen, actually?
Yeah, it will create a setting.
You will recognize it.
Yeah, you will recognize. You will be.
You have to invent it yourself.
You're pulled in. You're just pulled in, little by little. You're pulled in, and you just find yourself just slowly like, okay, this is what's happening. It's not like, okay, let me plan how it's gonna be. Okay, this. You don't plan this. You just want to share because it's so pleasant to share the knowledge, and there's nothing in it for you. Even they say that teaching this knowledge is the highest punyam that expounder, that teacher can get. Why? Because everyone else is giving you limitation. No matter what they teach you, they're giving you limitation. The guru gives you limitlessness. So if the guru gives limitlessness, then by definition, that should give most punyam to the teacher. But that one who is teaching, there's nothing in it for, quote, me teaching. So the punyam is going to nobody. It's the strangest thing. So you're supposed to be receiving maximum punyam, but you don't need punyam because you know that punyam gives you another body. So you don't want punyam nor papam. In fact, there's no question of want because the identity has changed. So it's going to nobody. It's just going to nobody. Now, what do you mean it's going to nobody? Well, in Tattva Bodha, we say that to whom does a Jivan Mukta's punyam go? To those who pay attention. It's obvious. To those who pay attention to the knowledge. Right? You walk away and you go, wow, things are clear. Well, that's punyam from the Jivan Mukta. Then to whom does Jivan Mukta's papam go? Not that they have any, right? But to whom does that go? To those who criticize him or her, those who make their life very hard. Yeah, it's hard to prove, but that's what it says in a Tattva Bodha, right? Why? Because it's like giving someone a hard time, like a priest. You're giving a priest a hard time, and you're feeling something in you recognizes this is not the right thing to do. This is wrong. And yet something in me can't stop myself. So it's easy to do it, but it's just building a sense of isolation in that one who is hurting someone who is wise or doing something for other people. They may hate the guru, but that guru is touching people's lives. This is a fact. And so what happens is, when after they die, this will be massive, massive papam onto that individual. And even while they're alive, even if you tell them stop, they probably won't stop because the mind is not mature enough. Person who cannot stop is helplessly acting out of one's own pain, out of one's own confusion. So confused that the program says, no, do it. It's giving me some satisfaction. It's giving me some satisfaction. So it's a total distortion. That fella wouldn't even feel as much satisfaction doing that to a dictator who has, unfairly treated millions, but feels satisfaction projecting all of that yuck towards someone who's changing other people's lives and giving them limitlessness. This is also possible, and it happens a lot. So the way that the compensation system works is that you can't get away with it. And this is where the trust in Ishvara comes. And as for those who will miss out on all of the, right, suppose someone gets kind of, bad-mouthed, right, or their popularity reduces because they're being attacked, all of those who will miss out, right, from not seeing the true person, they're also missing out. So think about how much damage is happening. You have sincere seekers who would benefit so much from that person, but because that person has been put in some bad light by some hater, this or that, then all of that missing out to help oneself, all of that papam goes back onto the hater. In that sense, to whom does Jivan Mukta's papam go to? To the haters. Yeah. And therefore, you can see how complex the world is. Even if you have someone that's presenting the highest knowledge, like Krishna and Rama, they too had so many enemies. Think about it. Lord incarnate, who's supposed to be the most charming, the most pleasant, the most accommodative, the most loving, even that one cannot be seen by a common man like Duryodhan. Can't see it. This means the person has to be at your level, relatively at your level, to appreciate who you are. That's why we say don't take it personally, because the one who is having some, things about you, they have to see you. They literally have to see you. But most are not at that level. This is a fact. 99% of the people who you meet are not at that level. They will only see assumptions. They will only see, their own projections. So if you take it personally, now it becomes, as Swami Dayananda says, it becomes internalized. Therefore, let me not internalize when someone attacks me, when someone criticizes me, when someone gives me some funny look, when someone says, you can't, you don't know anything, what do you know? You should see these people, what do you know? Stop. Do not let that come to you at all. I've seen it in my life happen so many times, but when I see who they are really, I see where they're coming from. And it was never keeping with the facts. Number one, the person didn't even know 1/100th about you. Nothing. Just saw you, projected, went away. But if they knew you, that would not happen. Therefore, one needs to remain strong and objective when these forms of, these immature projections and attacks come. It's not personal. It's never personal. Because as we said, 4 potential options are possible. The person's coming from has their own samskaras. That means their own impressions make them who they are. They could be a slow thinker, a poor thinker, a dull thinker. This is carryover. That's why you can have a person born that is kind of dull in the way they think. Their personal conditioning from childhood, which forms certain hatred for certain people and love for other people. Certain, magnetism for something and, I don't want that for something else. We call this likes and dislikes. Limited information. You never have total information about anyone, and they don't have any information about you. And because they don't have total information, it's very easy to fill in the rest. And what do I fill it in? My own unresolved stuff gets projected and fills in those things that I don't know about you. And 4, environment. Environment can make a huge difference. Sometimes if you teach in an ashram, then ashram induces devotion in everyone, more or less. It's like it's a devotional environment. But then you teach in an ordinary sort of a place, and everyone's like, yeah, you know, what's going on and this or that, so that the reverence goes away. So you can see how much the environment can change the person's behavior. This too makes it unfair to thus judge you, because you could be someone totally different in India, in an ashram, in a different kind of environment. 4 factors are true at any one moment. How can I possibly put you into a box? That just indicates a shallow character. Therefore you say, no, I will never, ever allow anyone to come to me, to touch me, because I know who I am. I am a hard worker. I know what it takes to suffer, to cry, to pray, to think and think and think and think, to, you know, take 5 days away and to listen and to be patient and to stay. I know that. And no one can move that away. So your strength, your confidence is in just your own strengths, your own ability to sit with it for day after day, year after year. Let me see you, Mr. or Mrs., who is so quick to judge me, do the same thing. Therefore, you find your own inner strength out of all of the hard work that you're doing, and that keeps you non-movable. Not cold, but just non-moving. Yeah, and the second reason why the traditions go out of existence is what we call orthodox. Orthodox means it's talking old language, and it's not modernizing it to right now. It's not answering what's in it for me in the modern age. If I speak on rituals, that had a very good validity back then. But nowadays, you don't need that as much. The context has changed. So we have to constantly answer what's in it for me for having this knowledge in the modern times of 2024. And Vedanta is constantly adapting. Therefore, it never goes out of age. Whereas those systems that are, orthodox, old, well, they have something to offer, but because they don't adjust, it gets turned off. This is why Christianity is on a kind of a fall, because they're not modernizing the teaching. Now, the next verse will bring this story down to the individual level, but also it will give a second interpretation of Vayu and Agni. So far, Vayu and Agni we think are devas, but let's look at the second interpretation of this story. So 4.5. Atha adhyatmam yat etat gachati iva cha manaha anena cha etat upasmarati abhikshnam sankalpaha. So Vayu is a presiding deity of sense of touch. So in other words, all of the intelligence which makes possible feelings, subtle feelings or touch, that's Vayu. Not only for you, but for everyone. And not only for everyone, but also devas. So Vayu represents that total intelligence which allows this individual to feel this is different texture than this texture, or to feel certain feelings in your body. And what it says here is that Vayu is the total intelligence, and yet you, in comparison as an individual, are very limited in that sense. Because just imagine how much intelligence has to go in this being who facilitates and through which you can feel different textures and feel different feelings. And what it says here is that your sense of touch is far less evolved than Vayus, far less evolved. They can feel the subtlest of the subtlest, probably even atoms. We just feel, some rough texture. So it is far, far less evolved ours is. And yet, their advanced system cannot touch Brahman, cannot feel, contact Brahman. I got him. Now, if theirs is 1,000 million times more sophisticated than ours on earth, and they can't come in touch with Brahman through feeling it, through experiencing it, through sensing it, through feeling it some texture or some kind of a sensation, then what to say about you and I? That means you can put every single individual on earth together, all of our intelligence. Even with that, you could not contact Brahman using a sensation or an experience. Why? Because Brahman is not a sensation or an experience, but because of which sensation or experience is recognized. That means it will never be a distinct, something distinct, but in whose presence distinct sensations are constantly known to you all year round, all life long, not only for you, but also for me. Think about this. This means, as I said some time ago, you can plug all of the knowledge in the world, in yourself, that talks about Brahman. You will never know Brahman more than you know it right now, as self-evident I. You will never know yourself more than you already know yourself right now. This is a huge statement, because we're constantly thinking, I need to read one more book, I need to read one more course or go to one more seminar to know who I am. But this is not the case at all. Because even your concern to say, I need to know who I am, what is lighting up that experience? I am. I totally know who I am. What is lighting up that experience? The same I am. Nothing's changed. Okay? So we always bring our mind back to that which is always available, rather than, right, identifying with these ideas. I have to contact something big. So this is the knowledge here. And same thing with Agni, right? Agni is a devata for eyes. In other words, no matter how sophisticated their eyes or visual system is, they will never be able to see Brahman as a form. That if they cannot see form, some light or some whatever, right? Then what to say about human beings who are 1,000,000 times less in strength? Therefore, story shows you that sensory knowledge of the 5 senses, no matter if how sophisticated it is, the inner feeler, the inner intuitor, the inner one who, receives epiphanies, all of that, no matter how sophisticated it is, it will never, ever, ever come in touch with Brahman. Brahman is that in whose presence this limited system is revealed. Brahman is that in whose presence their system is also equally revealed. So what's the only difference? Sophisticated senses, here, not so sophisticated senses, but they're all in the presence of one I am, I am, I am. Okay? Now, it further says also that Agni and Vayu, your 5 senses, are not enough to know Brahman. You need, because you still need to use your senses to read the text and listen. It's an oral tradition. So in a sense, you do need ears and eyes to see the text, to read. But Vayu and Agni is not enough. What else do you need? Indra. Now, what does Indra represent? The mind. The mind. What kind of a mind? Just any mind? No. A mind with all of this, who's living all of this. Therefore, Indra comes to a place of humility, curiosity, and even then, that mind is not enough. That mind needs, someone said it, I think Hani said it, a guru. But even the guru is not enough. The guru needs the help of a yaksha. Therefore, you need the senses, you need the mind, you need the guru, and you need the means of knowledge, which is the yaksha. And all these things come together for knowledge to take place finally. Not only for you, but also for the devatas who are 1,000,000,000 times more sophisticated than we are. This means if you go into some advanced world, the teaching will be exactly the same. There's a little joke, one fella says, so what's the highest purpose on earth? To attain moksha. oh, okay, this is boring. I'll just go to Brahmaloka because that's the highest world you can go to. And this fella just does a lot of activity. They do the whole 9 yards, they until they turn blue in the face, just totally constantly chanting and doing rituals. Their house is full of smoke constantly, right, from all the rituals. It's like, what is this house is on fire 24/7, right? And they're doing everything down to the bit. And they finally, after death, go to Brahmaloka. And they're like, I'm finally here. I've done it. And you got to meet Brahmaji, right? The king of this loka. And so Brahmaji, so what is your purpose here? And Brahmaji says, my only purpose here, whoever comes, is to teach you who you are. And what does that involve? Well, it involves the exact same knowledge as Kena Upanishad, from which you just came from. And you're like, are you telling me I just spend my whole life, right, living in some bubble, thinking it's going to be better here? Yes, you spend your whole life not wasting, but attaining something, and you cannot get out of this creation until the same knowledge that's taught on earth is taught also in the highest loka that you can go to. Think about that. So I would rather just get the knowledge here, because going to Brahmaloka is just such astronomically small chance of to even go there. Therefore, you don't get out of this loka or creation until the very same teaching gets taught to you, no matter what kind of a being it is. Okay? And until then, it says here, one recognizes Brahman through thoughts and meditation repeatedly. So through thoughts and meditation repeatedly, we're talking about Saguna Brahma Vishaya. In other words, meditation, relating with Ishvara. So until I recognize the reality, what is my job? Relating with Ishvara through meditation, through transaction, through values, by refining my responses as I'm in this world. Until then, this knowledge, right, remains, it's a growing clarity. We said Jijnatsu is a growing clarity. And one class, it's a growing clarity. Another class, it's a growing clarity. Every class is a growing clarity. Until one moment, you just understand. It is very, very obvious. In fact, as I'm speaking about this, I see your heads shaking, which is very nice to see this. This means like, wow, you're actually getting this, It's really nice to see this. So this means you're connecting. But those who are not necessarily connecting, what's the task for that one? Continue relating to Ishvara in meditation and in your transactions. And then the next verse, what is the proper approach for a Vedanta? What is the proper attitude for approaching Vedanta? And I'm just going to go through the two lines. It says, therefore, verse 4.6, therefore Brahman has to be meditated upon, as I just said. In other words, I have to understand, I need a pramana, which will give me clarity. What kind of clarity? Well, first of all, if I am not comfortable with Ishvara and I want just to go to Brahman, I have to rethink that. Because Ishvara is all that is. They're not two different things. Wherever there's mithya, that's exactly where satyam is. If I reject the world, I'm rejecting concepts. If I reject concepts, I'm rejecting the very thing that I'm seeking awareness. Therefore, there is no question of excluding anything here. Just reconciling it all. That's all. Satya Mithya.
You say when you reject the world, Ishvara, you reject Brahman.
Yes.
Can you explain that?
Yes. So, in other words, wherever. So, if so suppose the content of this chair is wood. It is the wood. So, if I kind of reject, right, this part on the top of the chair, then no matter what part I'm rejecting, because it's also made out of the same content as the whole chair, then I'm by definition rejecting the whole chair. Because the whole substance, the substance of the world, the substance of this chair is the wood. The substance, the content of this world is awareness, known to me as I am, I am, I am. However, what happens is the person tends to stay there, and they stay in this bubble of I am. And how do you know you stay in the bubble of I am? Because the world is none of my business. When it comes to the world, I'm unable to reconcile the world. So what we say is that rather than staying in this illusionary bubble, you don't want to, is that to understand that I am everything, because the content is everything. So the content is the world, the content is I am, the content is, right, my flesh. So I have to also perform this analysis and get to see that it all ultimately resolves into concepts, finally into the very awareness which is known to me as I am. So therefore, Brahman has to be meditated upon. The second incorrect notion we can have is that I can do something to gain freedom from limitation. You can't do anything because you're either limited or limitless. Infinity has no connection to finite. Limitation has no connection to limitless. You're either limited or limitless. No matter how much a limited being does, limitation plus limitation plus limitation plus limitation will always remain in the limited category. Either I am limited or I am limitless. If I am limitless, which is what Vedanta asserts, then there is no question of doing anything to gain limitlessness, only to remove the idea that I am limited. Only remove the notion that makes me think that I am this small little being consisting of my thoughts and my emotions. No connection between limitation and limitlessness. Think about that. If there's no connection, then there's no question of doing anything to attain limitlessness, only discovering what is limitless right now, which is I am. And we've done the analysis how. Okay. And then finally, another mistake is turning Brahman into an imagination, into a subtle thought. And we said the correction to this, it is not a thought. Moksha is akanda akara vritti. All this means is your thought, right, is not creating an image of Brahman, but your thought has removed images of Brahman. That's why akanda akara means without a form, something that is without a form. Everything else puts forms into your mind. I show you this, speaker. It is a form right now in your mind. But I am cannot be a form. Therefore, it is a mode of understanding that I am never some kind of a thing somewhere over there. It is right now revealing all of my vrittis. It is revealing all of my thoughts, emotions, concerns, anxieties, pains, sensations. Person who engages to know Brahman, this is the second line, the person who engages to know Brahman becomes adorable to others. Why do they become adorable to others? Why does a Jivan Mukta become adorable to others? Because you resolved all your complexities. You're no longer this complex person carrying around pumpkins and cucumbers and like it's so heavy. The person's cheerful, they're friendly, they're relating to you. None of this nonsense, oh, I'm this person, I'm big, I'm small, all of this nonsense just falls away. And that's very adorable to people. It's common sense, right? You just resolve, you worked on yourself so much, you're just not carrying these, these subtle ideas like I've got an agenda for you. People feel this. And it's threatening, it's confrontational. All of this has fallen away. And also, it also means they enjoy clarity at all levels. They understand what is awareness. They understand what is knowledge power. They also understand what it means to make the right decisions. And what it means to make the right decisions is you can't make the right decision. Why? Because you always have limited information. So it's not a matter of making the perfect decision, but make a decision, see what feedback you receive, and then you can course adjust. No perfect decision, no perfect person to marry, no perfect teacher, no perfect seat to sit in, no perfect room, no perfect weather, no perfect thought, no perfect affirmation, no perfect sight, no perfect smell, no perfect food. Nothing is ever going to be perfect. Therefore, the person makes a decision fully well knowing I can't make a right decision. I can make an informed decision, but that informed decision can only be informed that much. You don't have 10 years to research over a single decision what to eat. You gotta eat something. But then you discover, oh, what I ate was actually, it gives me food poisoning. You can't blame yourself. You were just doing the best you could. You didn't have time to think, what could be? Let me take a microscope. You don't do that. This is why there's no perfect decision. Just make a decision and the feedback system will tell you. And then you can course adjust. This is how life is lived.
Can I say that the creation of Ishvara is perfect?
The creation of Ishvara is always infallible. That means it never makes a mistake. Yeah. So this is a very good, subtle thing you picked out. Yeah. Now, because we're given a free will, that we're able to make a choice. So like this, we can never make quite a right decision because you're guided by those 4 principles: likes and dislikes, your own impressions, the environment, and limited information. Okay? And it's a great relief, by the way, to know this. Hey, I can't ever make a right decision. It's a great relief. We also saw this in the Bhagavad Gita, where, right, Bhishma, someone so wise, he didn't do anything. Draupadi says, how can you wise men just stand here, let a woman like me get disrobed or humiliated like this? Bhishma got up and says, well, it's not our part to play because the Pandavas, Yudhishthir had any chance to say stop the game, but he didn't. I didn't want to interrupt. So this was Bhishma's justification, but Krishna saw something else. He saw that number 1, the game was based on deceit, and you have no obligation to fulfill a game based on deceit. The dice was manipulated by Shakuni's Siddhi. He was moving the dice. And you have no obligation to fulfill a game that was based on cheating. And second of all, yes, Yudhishthir did not say stop. He didn't say stop, but still, you have no right to treat a woman who wasn't even involved in the game with this kind of unfairness. Krishna saw this, and therefore Krishna stepped in and saved Draupadi. But nobody else could. Even if Yudhishthir is so smart, he could not make the right decision because he didn't have all of the information. He didn't quite know that the game was cheating. Is it cheating? I'm not sure. And so this made him doubt.
And how do you get rid, if you have if you know you have done something that's not right, and you can ask for forgiveness, or you can't put it right because the person isn't maybe available or it's not more in your life. Can you just take that whole topic again in your head, look at the parts that you could have done differently, and are you able to forgive yourself?
Forgiving yourself is a matter of knowing that the information that I had was available there, but I didn't have all information. Knowing fully well that if you did have all information, you could have made a different choice, but you didn't. On the basis of that, I can forgive myself that next time I will be more careful and include more data in my decision-making process. So, like this, you never quite know, but you can always course correct based on what the world tells you. And you will feel that. That's why we say the emotional indicators are your greatest savior. So this means if I'm told, don't, emotions, all this stuff, then I shut down the only savior you have to tell you what is to be done. The only savior.
So we all made relatively right decisions based on just being here.
Relatively right, yeah, relative. And what has relatively right done for you? You came to the tradition. Even though you doubted yourself so much, that means you don't have to know the whole thing to come to the right place. The president only uses 5,000 most frequently used English words in a dictionary to run the whole country. Do you have to know 120,000 words to run the country to be a president? Think about it. Only 4 make America great again.
I find sometimes it's not totally clear if I interpret Ishvara's feedback system correctly. Even my own emotions, it's very complex.
Yeah.
Like for example, I feel uncomfortable. That could come from because I have a certain perfectionism, which is another bubble I have makes me feel uncomfortable. So
Sure.
that's not actually the truth of Ishvara's feedback. My emotion, because that emotion is the best indicator. So what I'm saying is very. One needs to discern like how to interpret it correctly.
Sure. So the question is that even if you have an emotional indicator, it is still covered by your own pratibhasika. You won't know until you exercise that action, and you will still get the feedback, and then you can see how much. I'll give you a concrete example. So sometimes it's hard for me to know what role should I be playing, the teacher or the friend. And it's not always easy because I want to retain some professionalism. And sometimes I told one of my students, I don't talk to me like I'm just like your buddy across the road. When you email me, right, there's a certain kind of a thing that you say, teacher, I want to, ask a question. And I said this to him. And he said, I felt that you were, treating me like, what is this? You're treating me like I'm your friend. He just says to me, I'm your friend. I don't want you to be my teacher. I want you to be my friend. And I'm like, wait a minute, I am your teacher. So the whole mix-up of roles happened. Now, I'm clear. If you send me an email, I will respond as a teacher. When we come together, I will be your friend. So there's a certain professionalism I keep. But because we're being so close together, right, physically, together, friends, it's like the whole roles got mixed up. And I mentioned this, and he didn't take this well at all. And I'm like, whoa, what kind of a thing is this? So now I felt that there's a certain indicator in me. There has to be some, right, congruence here. But now I have used that indicator to show him that there needs to be this professionalism. And what kind of a result did I receive? Well, not the one that I was expecting. So now maybe I overreacted, right? Maybe I was demanding a little bit of, some kind of a professionalism. I don't know. But what I do know is this happened. You see? So you never know whether you're operating from your own stuff and you're calling that emotional indicator, but you do know once the result comes. And then what happened? We had to go into a relationship repair mode. So we had to meet together and kind of, readjust. And what happened? Well, we're just continuing to be friends now. But still, it's in the class and so on. So it's very complex. There's no like black or white answer to this. But one thing you do get feedback. You see, there's no like for certain, here's how it should be. This is how we want it to be, but it's not like this.
Would it be like that you should experiment, you can experiment with this?
Yeah.
So if I get the same feeling all the time, I think I cognitively think, well, now I'm going to change my action and do it a bit different.
Yeah.
And see what reaction I get, and do I feel different?
Yeah, super.
Good. It's
Super.
You find an opening because we always want to be open for change.
Yeah.
Just try to do a little different action.
And this is exactly.
Or apply another thought, the
Yeah.
opposite thought.
Yeah. And this is exactly what my approach is now, to try slightly something different, something less intense. So one has to find that mode. It's an art, and art takes time to perfect.
And what a relief to just see the fact that I always have just limited knowledge and I will never ever be able to make the right decision, the 100% right decision. So I can only come close to that and see what the feedback is. I mean, it's such a revelation and relief that you don't have even to try to make the 100%.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to try. And as I said, all of the information I have, I still get totally unexpected results. And I'm like, is it me now? Is it them? So you don't quite know. But what you do know is this happened, number one, and number two, I need to bring things together now. I need to make some reconciliation. Okay? And also clarity in reference to Jiva and Ishvara. So what does this mean? We often have this idea that, I know it's an extended session, we have this idea that Jiva is a subject and Ishvara is an object. You cannot objectify Ishvara nor awareness. These two realities you cannot objectify, because Ishvara is everything that's happened in the past. You don't see what happened in the past. That's happening right now and in the future. So there is no subject-object relationship between Jiva, between you and Ishvara. I'll give you some example. There's one ocean in whom waves are coming and going, and all of the waves are within one ocean. So those waves are just effects of the one ocean. Where's the question of subject-object? Like wave is one thing and ocean is over there. All of the waves are within one ocean. Therefore, if I look at Ishvara as an object, then what will I do? Then I will try to, now what is Ishvara? All knowledge, all power. And since we're so used to getting objects, I would want to get all knowledge, all power into me. This happens. I want to know everything. The second error is, if I am a subject and Ishvara is somewhere over there, right? I imagine Ishvara is somewhere over there, then since the truth of Ishvara is awareness, then I will also objectify awareness. So bring down Ishvara to you right now. Just like the wave is just a manifestation of the ocean, in that same way, everything about you, your thoughts, your life, your decisions, your pains and struggles and joys, all of it is just manifestation of Ishvara. And wherever there is mithya, wherever there is wave, that's exactly where Satyam is. So they're not two different things. We're so used to saying the body is an object, I am the subject. This was preliminary. This also has to slowly be released, this teaching. It was just there to help you understand it is just manifestation of different reality, of the same reality. It's different manifestations of the same reality. Finally, when the wave recognizes that there is one more reality, and that is the truth of me, the limited wave, and the ocean, the limitless, total is one water. So this is where we both enjoy the one unity. And how is that known to you? As I am. And even if you know that, your eyes are still programmed to only see forms. Even if you know the final reality, because your senses can only hear individual waves, you still experience the exact same world. Nothing has changed, because that's how your senses are programmed. And then the next verse, look at this. Now someone in the class is going to ask, who didn't get it at all, after the whole course, is going to ask a question. Verse 4.7. Upanishadam bhoho bruhi iti ukta ta Upanishad brahmi vava ta Upanishadam abruma iti. The student says, "Oh teacher, This was all wonderful that you have presented. Such good logic. Wow, we've got to so much participation here. We smiled, we went through, sessions yesterday and on the board, and we did some Tai Chi, and all of this was so wonderful. And the teaching was fantastic. Now, when does the real Upanishad start? Like the real good stuff. When does this all begin? Come on, I'm waiting for it. Come on, when is it actually beginning, right? And the teacher says, you just heard it. There's nothing more to it. All that was just taught was the knowledge. There's nothing more to it. No matter what instrument it comes out of, it's going to be the same knowledge. Exactly the same. Now, what should this student do? The one who asked this question? Just so we know, we got some backup. Verse 4.8. Tasyai tapaha damaha karma iti pratishta vedaha sarvangani satyam ayatanam. The Guru here gives 3 disciplines. So that one who feels that teaching is yet to begin has 3 options. Tapas. Tapas just means practice. Practice, right? Disciplines in your life. We've got here deliberate thinking. We've got many disciplines here. The second is damaha. This is called restraint over senses. Now, what this really means is that when I feel pain in my life or something's going off, I still do what is to be done. That means I feel a temptation to, spoil myself a little bit and, watch 5 hours of Netflix. You can do that, but there's a certain understanding. I will watch it, but not for 5 hours. Let me do it for 1 hour. So there's a certain deliberation in your actions. You say, this is fine, but I will do what is to be done. In fact, in business, we have one common phrase that makes a successful business owner. One who is successful in life or in business does what is to be done, whether they feel like it or not. The one who is still struggling does things only when they feel like it. That's what makes 2 students or 2 business owners or 2 people, one who is very successful and one who is striving, but it's not working out. Do it whether I feel like it or not. Duty, it is to be done. And karma is to convert your actions, ordinary actions, into a spiritual practice. How? How do we convert actions into spiritual practice? Karma yoga. Karma yoga's purpose is for clearing up the mind. How do we clear up the mind? Good. Bringing the order of Ishvara in all my transactions. Everything I give is to the altar of Ishvara, and everything that I receive is from this vast network of causes. Therefore, nothing's random here. It is coming for a reason, and I have to do the best I can to handle it with composure. And finally, next verse, for whom has this knowledge taken place? Verse 4.9, Yaha va etam evam veda apahatya pap manam anante swargaloke jyeye pratishtati. So suppose that your mind has totally assimilated this knowledge and you are clear with the vision. What happens is all of your punyam and papam means all of the fruits of pleasant and unpleasant actions that your body has done, not only in this life, but all lives. So all actions that were done by the doer, which has accrued, collected results, whether they were pleasant or unpleasant results, all of that is burnt. Why is it burnt? Because nobody owns it anymore. There is no owner. In other words, there's no I who owns it anymore because your identity has shifted. And for this reason, what happens upon death of that individual? Anante swarge loke. In other words, one attains the highest loka. Now we're not talking about loka. You have to look at the implied meaning of this word. What it means eternal heaven. Can heaven be eternal if I've just entered heaven for the first time today? No. So this means implied meaning. Eternal means it's true already now. And second of all, you can't have eternal or limitless heaven. Why? Because heaven is over there and it's not over here. Therefore, it is limited within space and time. Therefore, it cannot be referring to like heaven, but it refers to I am myself as the whole thing, in whom the universe still resides and keeps on projecting the universe and people for them to attain moksha and get out of this cycle of forms. And you remain as the limitless one, as yourself, without ever coming back as another form, as another wave. You remain as both the ocean and the water. You remain as the reality. You have solved the beginningless problem. The beginningless situation has been finally solved. You dropped your body and you are abiding as the limitless one. And this concludes Kena Upanishad. You have removed, the coloring of the glass was being removed while alive, but now the final thing, the body has also been dropped. And you're not getting anything more. Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.